Hey, good morning, everybody. Still got a lot of folks coming in. If everybody wants to go ahead and start getting a seat, we'll try to get our class started. I promise you there's plenty of seats for the folks at the door. Don't think once the heads start dropping down in spots, you'll see some seats. We got several over here to my left, several in this middle section right here. Tim and Ginger hadn't got here yet. Somebody can come get their seats and make them mad. Everybody come on in and get a seat. We're going to get started here in just a minute. Dorita's ready. We better get started. Come on up, man. I feel like I'm way far away from you. I don't mind. You on? All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Really appreciate everybody being here today. We've got a special guest with us. I'm not sure how to take the fact that so many of you were really wanting to hear JJ, and you said that I'm so excited to hear JJ. I was like, well, what about me? I teach the class, but that's okay. Hey, we had JJ with us about a month ago. And we brought him in because this class is working through a series that we're calling Stories. We've talked about Mary and how, as that young mother, she had a remarkable story to tell, and the men on the road to Emmaus. And we talked about Rhoda being at the gate while the entire church was praying in Acts 12. Last week we talked about Saul, who became Paul, and the story in Acts 9. And we said that part of our series would be we'd bring in some guests. And so we brought in a guest, and we ran out of time. We had a lot more. I think we left you in Uganda, I think. So we really need to get you back to America. But what I'd like for us to do, because I know every week here at Crosspoint we'll have visitors, maybe folks who are out of town the first time. I want us to back up just a little bit and recap but just a few things, but we don't want to leave you in Uganda again at 10:15, all right? So we'll go a little bit quicker and get us back to kind of where we were. But let's why don't you just take a second for those that, again, I can see new faces here today. Introduce yourself, who you are, how many kids you got. Tell a little bit about Laura. Just a quick intro, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, awesome. So I'm JJ McCormick, for those of you who don't know me. I help lead the Bridge class here, which is a young adults group, probably 24-ish to like 30-ish years old, is about the age group that we're in. I'm married to my wife, Laura McCormick. She is one of our children's ministers here. She does the birth through like pre-K here. She does an amazing job. And then I've got two kids, Ruth and Henry. Ruth is almost 2 years old. She'll be 2 years old next month. And Henry will be 5 months old this month. So,
awesome. That's great. Yeah, Laura does a great job. JJ does a great job with all. He helps also with our teens. And you're leading one of our new man church groups that I go to on Monday morning. I just sort of sleep through a lot of it because I'm not used to getting up early. I'm kidding. No, it's great. I'm there.
It is 7:30.
I mean, I know for a lot of y'all that's not early. That is for
It's
me.
not.
Okay. All right. So here I want you to do. Let's start. Go back to your childhood. Tell the class just a little bit, kind of about growing up, mom and dad. I know there was a divorce there. Kind of who you wound up living with, just to maybe kind of get us through those first 8-10 years. Again, we're just going to play catch up, and then we'll slow down a little bit when we get to the storms in 2011.
Okay, yeah. So let's see. I lived with both of my parents until about the age of 6 or so. My parents got a divorce, and then we went to live with my mother and the man who became my stepfather. He really didn't care for us much. My mom, they were both on drugs and alcohol and things like that. That was pretty heavy, and I didn't really realize that till way afterwards. But anyway. So through there, we moved to Phil Campbell, and that's about 45 minutes to an hour south of here. And we lived probably about a quarter mile from a church. I used to ride my bike up to the church all the time. My father, we got to see him on the weekends. It was me and my sister at that time, but then we had multiple other siblings come alongside in many different avenues. Anyway, so... that's pretty much it. I mean, outside of
one thing that you said to JJ first told this story to me and Gina at a retreat back in October, and that's why I wanted him to come share it with you guys. But one thing that you told me that night at the gym over there at Clements Church, that I just feel like maybe that this was unintentionally, because the way you described your stepdad. He wasn't pushing you to go to church, but he said, I can't keep you from going, or I'm okay if you go. But so I guess talk just for a little bit about, as a child, about the fact that you said, man, I would go to wherever the doors were open, wherever I could get in. I feel like seeds were being planted with you, and probably you didn't even know it at a young age. So talk about that just for a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing that I share, so right now in the youth class on Wednesday nights, we're doing what's called our 333. So we're trying to be able to tell people our story in 3 seconds, tell people the gospel in 30 seconds, and then tell people the gospel in 3 minutes. And so we're teaching them how to use their life and line it up with the gospel. And so my easy way to do that is to talk about how God has provided for me and my family. I would consider it miraculously, really, just time and time and time again. He's just been faithful in that. And so I say that to say this is, in the time where my father and my mother, or my stepfather and my mother were very abusive to me and my sister, and just things like that, just all throughout our life, when God provided me a bike to just ride around to different churches and things like that, there was this one church that we went to, and that I went to. I was riding my bike, and someone came out and basically just offered me pizza. And as a poor kid in Phil Campbell, where there's no pizza joints, I mean, the nearest one was 20 minutes away. It was a really big deal. And so I ran home, and I asked my stepdad, and he had this like weird God complex, I guess, where he was like, well, I can't stop you from going to church. And I didn't realize that in that moment that was God providing for me a way out, right? That was God providing a scapegoat for me, right? And so I took that and I abused the heck out of it. I went to any church, anywhere that was near or far. There was a church that met on Saturdays that I would, like, if I was at home at my parents' house, it was about 1.5 miles away, I would ride my bike to like a Seventh-day Adventist church just to be at a church because I could, So with that, I started going to church just literally all the time, any church that I could go to. And really it was just because there wasn't a lot of kids that lived around us. We didn't have a whole lot of community really around where we are, just kind of out in the sticks. And so, I would just go to a bunch of churches and just be ministered to. I mean, there were so many different people who just out of the goodness of their hearts would take in this kid who just rode up on a bike that they don't know, and would teach him a little bit about Jesus, or a little bit about how to fold clothes or get stains out of clothes, or teach me about communion. I mean, even teach me about the Holy Spirit. There was a Pentecostal church that I went to that was wild, to say the least, but it was cool. And just getting to see, how people respond to what they.
That might be another class
Yeah,
for another
yeah.
time.
I was like, I don't know how deep to go into that. So, but anyway, I say
Remember,
that to
we're
say,
online.
I guess.
No, I'm just kidding.
I say that to say that the Lord provided a lot of seeds to be planted, right? I mean, time and time again, I heard message after story after everything else that I think that God really used to shape me. Now, in the moment, I didn't realize a lot of it. I mean, I didn't understand a lot of the things that were being talked about, but fast forward and looking back, you just get to see how God was faithful.
Well, and I think the thing or the lesson, and this is something I've heard my wife say as a children's minister for years and years and years, is y'all, our church, I don't think we need to ever take for granted when an opportunity like that presents itself, when there is a little boy or a little girl, or to buy the pizza, or to get them into a class, or to get them into a vacation Bible school, or to sponsor them to go to church camp, or you turned out pretty good. I mean, I know you're just 26, but you're good so far.
I don't know about that, but thanks.
But I think that's something for everybody to keep in the back of your mind, that you don't know what the long-term effect would be when you're just kind to somebody. All right, let's talk about, for those of you that remember 13 years ago, we had some pretty severe storms down in the Phil Campbell, Hackleburg area. I think it went up all the way up to Huntsville, that tornado. So just, again, for those that weren't here last time, go ahead and tell us what you told us about that day. I think you were with your dad. You weren't with your mom and your stepdad.
Right.
And kind of just talk through that day, what that happened, what all the medical things and hospitals and phones not working, and kind of catch us up on that, and then we'll move on into some of the other things.
Yeah. So I was about 13 years old, and I was in the 7th grade at Phil Campbell. I remember that it was on April 27th. That day, people had been talking about that day for like 2 weeks, it seemed like. The news was talking about it. Every meteorologist was talking about it. The people at school, there were rumors we were going to get out early, all that fun stuff. And then we did get out.
Did you get out early?
We did. Yeah,
Okay.
We got out about an hour and a half
That would have
early.
been a day you probably really should have gotten out early.
Yeah, we literally got out, I think, at like noon that day.
I mean, now
maybe.
it's like, the wind's 15 miles an hour, you're getting out of school. But that was a serious day.
Yeah,
Okay.
like I saw the buses shaking in the parking lot.
yes.
So we got out of school. I went home to my father and my stepmother and that family that we all had. And me and my buddy were just riding bikes. I mean, the wind had stopped blowing. It was green. We didn't understand that, but in the sky. But, we were just riding bikes, having a good old time. And then the tornado sirens go off. So we, run. I run to the storm shelter that my dad and my parents were all in. And my father was a volunteer firefighter at the time, so he had a scanner that was listening to, all the EMA stuff that was going on around that area. And standing out right beside this church, it was Spruce Pine Baptist Church, you could see an open field. And in the open field, there was this gigantic wall cloud. And that was really all you could see was that. And you could hear just echoes of twigs breaking, or probably trees breaking, and just different things like that was going on. And the last thing we heard on the scanner was like, hey, Phil Campbell's down. Power's out, nothing's working. And that's it. Everything stopped from there. And so we loaded up on our trailer, and we put we had some four-wheelers and some chainsaws. We just loaded that stuff up since my dad was a volunteer firefighter, and we just headed on in. As we get in, me and my dad, we raced to where we knew my mom and my stepdad and my sister and my little brother were, which was probably about 4 or 5 miles on the other side of Phil Campbell. And, as we were there, my dad kind of climbed over a giant tree that was in the way and looked and told me to go back. He didn't want me to see what was on the other side of that. And I am thankful I didn't have to see that. I mean, there was, from my understanding, I know there was I know at least 7 people that lived right there on the 3 houses leading up that were just out there on the ground. I mean, just some crazy stuff. Something that a 13-year-old boy definitely shouldn't see, but many people really, I don't think anybody should be exposed to that. Anyway, fast forward. So I go back to the triage center. While I'm at the triage center, I see them bring in my sister on a piece of plastic. She was 15 years old, and I ran out, told my stepmother. My stepmother comes in, gives them her information, and they said, we don't really know where she's going. We just know she's going somewhere north. And so me and her loaded up in the car, and we headed down to Russellville, where my grandmother lived. And I stayed at my grandma's house that night, taking care of my 2 little cousins. And my grandma and my stepmom, they all went out and tried to find out where my sister was going. So my job really in that moment, or what I felt was my job, was to figure out where my brother and my 5-year-old little brother and my 2 parents were. And so I was calling all the shelters that they heard, and that they were putting on TV saying that there were. I was calling all the hospitals around to see if they knew of anything. And at about 1 or 2 a.m., I don't really remember, I got a phone call from Children's Hospital in Birmingham, and they said that there was a kid who was 5 years old who matched my brother's description that they had coming in. That he hadn't, wasn't there yet. And so I finally got a hold of my father later that night, and he sent one of his friends down to verify, and it was my little brother. So
from your family, who actually passed away during the storms?
Yeah, so my mother and my stepfather both did. Again, another moment where, as weird as it may seem, I feel that God was providing a way out, right? We didn't have to go back to a home that was abusive after that. There were a lot of things that were about to happen. Those set of parents were about to get a divorce, and one was going to take my brother, one was going to take my sister, and they were going to leave me with my father. So there was a lot of stuff that was about to happen there that we looked at. And, it was just God providing a weird window, but a way out,
And that may be hard for some people in here to hear.
Right.
But, looking back on it, that's your truth. That's your story that you felt like. I have a question on here, but we don't have to go exactly the way it says. But, would you say that April 2011, that'd be one of what you would call your pivot points?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, before that, I didn't understand, I guess. One, I had no idea what hope was, right? Talking about growing up in an abusive home, I just assumed every other kid lived just like that, right? I didn't realize that wasn't a normal thing. So we didn't talk about it at school. I wasn't anything like that. I didn't realize that. And so I didn't know really what hope was. And so that day, I guess that day I realized what hope was, because I had a hope that I constantly was trying to find hope that my sister was going to be alive, my little brother was going to be alive, even my parents that I don't really understand why, but I still loved, right? I cared and adored them, right? I was still hoping that they were alive, and I understood hope at that time. Yeah. And so I think that really was a big pivot point, because after that I started going. I wasn't just going to church to get away from an abusive family. It started to be because I felt, I felt a need, right? My heart was yearning for that.
Yeah. Oh no, that's a great statement to make, and I kind of feel like that's about kind of where we were when we got cut short on time with class a month ago. What I'd like for us to do, and anything else you want to say about that no. particular period? I don't want to cut you. I'm not cutting you off. You say whatever you want. Okay. Your spiritual journey, I guess, from that point now, so you're 13. So I guess we're talking about the last 13 years of your life to get you to where you are now. I know there were at least 2 things I remember you talking to me about, and there may be more. So if I get the timeline mixed up, you fix it. There was a mission trip, time in Uganda, and then there was some things about helping be a part of establishing or something about the well here in Florence. Which one of the timeline? Which one? I don't know which one came first.
Yeah, Uganda came first.
Okay, well let's talk about. I'm a big believer in missions.
Yeah.
Always have been. We started taking families on mission trips here at Cross Point many years ago. Frank's mentioned it, and I've been a part of planning one since 2011, which is kind of crazy that that's when it was. But I believe in taking kids. I mean, teenagers and kids, and I think it's a formational, shaping type thing. Anyway, so you're a teenager, right? And you have an opportunity to go to Africa.
Yeah.
So kind of just talk through how that came about, why you were going, what was the work over there, what was happening in Uganda.
Yeah, so we moved to Russellville at this point, and there I had actually been a part of a church plant that had planted there in Russellville called Branches Church. And me and a friend of mine were devoted to that church pretty heavily. He was one of the worship leaders, and then I was doing all the tech stuff, all that fun stuff. And, we both were like, I think he had been on a foreign mission trip before, but really we were just like, hey, I've never done a mission trip. I would love to go somewhere. So we got connected with this group in Birmingham called Sozo Children, and we loved their mission. Their mission was just to help save the kids, help save the orphans, and in Uganda. Uganda doesn't have a robust system for caring for orphans or really even abused children and things like that, and as most developing third world countries don't. And so we just kind of fell in love with that. So he just went all in and went for the whole summer. I went for 2 weeks.
How old are you right now when you're going on this?
I was 16 because I remember I was old enough to drive. So I was 16. That was the summer of me going into the 11th grade. Had to raise like $2,500, something like that. I did that by selling shirts and working and mowing lawns and all kinds of stuff, but basically, raised the money to go. And so I went on a 2-week trip there and just kind of fell in love with the people, the mission, everything. And Sozo had just started kind of entering in, really doing some work with this village called Nangolo. And I think they had started like a little women's ministry there, helping them bring some income to that area by creating jewelry, like made out of glass and stuff like that. It was really cool. And then over the course of that year, they found that there was a need that, there were no the men weren't being reached in that area. And, the statistics show that a lot of things here in America, right, that if you take the man in first, the family will follow. Well, if any part of patriarchal culture, you would know that the man really is the head of the family in pretty much all of the cultures around. And so, the men just weren't coming, and it was just a necessity. And so not that next summer. That next summer I went back for a month. But then the next summer I went for 3 months. So I was after I graduated. I went for 6 months. So I went for 3 months during the summer and then 3 months during the next semester. So we stayed there for 6 months, and we started a men's ministry, which eventually spiraled into a church.
All right, did y'all get all that now? Those of you that have kids and we're worried about them, my dad would let me drive across O'Neill Bridge when I was 16 because, it was not wide enough. 16, you go to Uganda for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
17, you go for 3 months. 18, you go for 6 months.
1 month and 6 months.
So 1 month, 6 months.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Now, but
my parents weren't on board with it, by the way. I raised the money and told them I was going.
Well, but you raised the money. See, that's another thing. That's a responsibility that you took on, and you raised. But I would imagine people that knew you then and knew about you, knew your story. I think people wanted to help.
Absolutely, yeah. Once I started raising money for the 6 month thing, it was way easier. People were just like, yes, yeah, here's money, throw it at me.
Yeah, most people don't want to go to Africa for 6 months.
True.
So, do you still have a connection to the things that happened over there? Because now that's just 8 years ago.
Right, yeah. So I actually helped one of the guys. He was my translator there. His name's Moses. Moses is still a part of our family today. So we call probably twice a month or so, and he actually just got married this past month, which is really great. We have the same birthday. We're the exact same age. It was really weird when we found that out, but Moses went to school to be a pastor, and he's now at a church down there. I don't know if he's pastoring. I know he does a lot of speaking stuff there, but I know he also works in the real estate government office there in Uganda. So, but yeah, we talk all the time. I know he does a lot of ministry, things like that. That's our biggest connection.
That's awesome. So you said you started a church. I mean, that's you, your friend, and I guess the group out of Birmingham.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so we we just started having small men's ministry is what we called it, but really it was just a Bible study with like one of the elders of the town. Elders were like councilmen or whatever. Their culture is very different, obviously, but they we just got to start talking to them and talking. They saw how the work that they were doing with the women's ministry and the kids ministry was starting to shape and change their village. So some of them took responsibility and was like, we want to understand who this Jesus person is. And so we got to have that conversation and got to really just love on these guys. And they were very hardened and didn't want to talk about really anything. They're not ones for sharing, but it's really hard to do that in a different language. There's a barrier there. But it was just awesome. I mean, I definitely, in those moments, I could really feel the Holy Spirit move because, I mean, there were moments where I would be talking and saying whatever. I don't remember what I was saying, but I would be saying stuff, and Moses would just look at me and go, wow. I'd be like, yeah, will you tell them that? And anyway, just getting to talk about how awesome and incredible this God is that we serve, and so it just kind of spiraled into a church. Really, I mean, I don't know how to.
No, that's great. I mean, in and of itself, I mean that's a story. That's a whole story there. So after the extended Uganda trip, you're 18-ish. You come back to the Shoals area,
Yep.
Or Franklin County, Carver County, Lauderdale, somewhere.
Yeah. So.
And you're going to go to UNA, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, so I was one of these dumb kids that didn't really listen to my school counselors and apply for all the colleges that you wanted to go to. I only applied for one, and then I ended up having to go to Northwest Shoals because I couldn't afford the other one. Which Northwest Shoals is not bad. I love that place. Anyway, so started going there, and we found out about this college ministry here in the Shoals called The Well. And so we started going to The Well, and they kept talking about doing a collegiate church plant and like what that meant, what that looked like. And it was a church that is ran like every other church, but it's meant to reach the college campus.
And are they still meeting? I know I should know these things. But is the Well still?
Oh yeah, they're.
Are they still downtown on Pine Street, or is it somewhere else now?
No, so they've moved. They're at Highland Baptist Church. They
Okay.
meet in their what we call our rock. They meet there.
Yeah. Are y'all familiar with the Well, folks that live here in our city and our area? So okay, you get involved with that. Talk through what your involvement was with that. I mean, what that kind of looked like.
Yeah, so I mean, I didn't really have.
I understand. My kids have gone to it before when they were at UNA. I mean, it's huge.
Yeah. So I didn't have like a spectacular role or anything. I'm not going to claim that, but really, I just was.
Well, we're not going to talk about it then.
Oh, okay, well, that's
no,
fine.
I'm kidding. No, I'm just joking.
No,
Go ahead.
so I did get to join the leadership team, and really the leadership team is just meant of college students. They have a deacon, they have pastors, they have everything, set. But then they had a leadership team for students to reach out to other students and get to lead Bible studies and life groups and things like that. But really the main goal, the guy there who was the lead pastor at the time, his name's Alan Tate. That man is the most multiplication-minded, meaning like he wants to create disciples through other people. He is the most multiplication-minded person I've ever met in my entire life. I mean, that guy has so many different systems and methods and just everything that he was teaching and pouring into us in how to make disciples. I mean, and the phrase that he used that I love and I still use all the time when I'm talking to students and to people and just teaching them how to share their story is he would say, the one-eyed man is king in the land of the blind. And what that meant is the people who could see a little bit, who knew a little bit, could lead all of those who knew nothing, right? And so when even with our students, with my 7th and 8th graders, I've told them that several times. It's like, even if you know a little piece of the gospel, you have the ability to share that with people who know nothing about Jesus, you know? And so the one-eyed man is king in the land of the blind. That is just something that I've just taken to heart and memorized, and I just run with it.
Well, and again, I don't know as much about the ministry, but from what I understand, it's been very impactful for that 18 to 22 year old, that college age. It's been something that maybe has brought some kids to Christ that maybe wouldn't have known about him otherwise. I guess from that, so what you're talking about, that multiplication mindset.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's so awesome about it, what's so awesome about UNA being right here is you can literally reach the world from this campus right here. There are students from Asia, from Africa, from Europe. There's people literally from all over. I sat in my economics class, sat beside a guy who was from Germany, and I got to share the gospel with him. You know, there's just so many. You can just impact the world right here in Florence, right there at UNA.
But I got interrupted. That's a lesson for all of us old people in here.
Yeah.
I mean, you sat by a guy in your economics class from Germany. I sat by people in my economics class and sometimes didn't pull my ball cap from above my eyes. I mean, let's just be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, you were intentional to share Jesus with the guy from Germany.
Yeah. I mean, it was just. It became part of our life cycle, just what we did, right? One awesome thing that we did a lot is Alan would want us to track our circle, you know, see, like, just draw out, like, who are the people you sit beside or talk to every day, you know, and just kind of look at that and see, well, do they know the gospel? And if they don't, I mean, it's just like any multi-level marketing scheme or, you know, being a salesperson in general. If you draw out your circle of influence, if they don't know about the product you're selling, you go sell it, right? And I wasn't selling Jesus. I was just telling people about him. But it was just that mindset, just being able to go out there and talk to people and bring people in. And then you get these stories like, you know, I got to bring a guy in. I was sharing the gospel, and we would do like one-to-one Bible readings and stuff. And now he became part of our church. And then he was doing it with another guy. And so we brought in another guy who then became part of our church. And then that guy is discipling another one. And I just ran into the other day at the coffee shop, I had ran into the guy who is like 5 streams down from me who was sharing the gospel with somebody else. You know, and the beauty of what Alan was always talking about is just being able to share the gospel with someone who's not, with people who you're not even in the same room with.
Wow. Man, that's pretty cool. I mean, you call it, we're all about jumping on whatever the latest multi-level, and we can make $8 per what. But that really is the multi-level.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's just bringing people
sharing
to
Jesus. Yeah, man, that's okay. Now, where did you meet Laura in all this?
Yeah, so met Laura.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a wonderful thing. So I met Laura at Chick-fil-A. We both worked there. In fact, the operator at Chick-fil-A here in Florence was going to our church at the Well, or kind of doing some stuff with it. And she met me and, you know, was like, "Hey, do you need a job?" And I was like, "Yes, I do." And so I got a job at Chick-fil-A. And Laura was the manager, and I was just some dude in the back that was cooking other people's chicken. And
so she was your boss.
She was, yeah. And then she
Did somebody say still is? Okay,
that is
I
true.
thought I heard that.
Yeah, and then she.
I wasn't gonna say it, but he's been married longer than I have. So
one of the worst jobs at Chick-fil-A is making the French fries. It's just so hot. There's like a little corner right there.
That's the worst job?
It is the worst job. It's just so hot.
Can you not
right there.
eat 2 or 3 of them?
I mean, you can, but you want to eat the chicken. You don't eat the fries.
All right.
Anyway, so Laura would always put me in that job, and I did not understand it, but it was because she really liked to talk to me, because the manager sits on the other side bagging. And so she just put me there every single time. And I would tell her, "I hate this position." And she would always put me there because she just wanted to talk. And we just kind of fell in love. So
That's awesome.
Yeah.
True love over Chick-fil-A fries.
I'm telling you.
Waffle fries.
That's right. I'm telling you, that would be great.
Yeah, they should put you on one of those red couches and let you tell that.
That would be fun. If you guys have connections, let us know.
I mean, we don't have time, but Chick-fil-A is a whole nother organization and leadership and how they do training. And
Absolutely.
I mean, I've read a lot of their stuff.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
that's a whole another dynamic organization.
Right. Yeah.
So you and Laura meet at Chick-fil-A. You get married. Where do y'all start worshiping together? I'm know eventually we're going to get to Cross Point, but I don't know when. When did you get? Where did you guys kind of go from after you got married? Because you have what I would call a very unusual, diverse, different background from probably 90% of the people in this room.
Maybe.
Laura probably is,
very-
grew up,
yeah, very conservative
daughter
Church
of
of
a
Christ,
Church of
yeah.
Christ minister,
Yeah.
went to Mars Hill. So
Absolutely.
how did y'all land on where you were going to go?
Yeah, so it was weird when we first started dating. I was not about the Church of Christ. I had just been burned on a couple of them in my area down there, and just was not a fan. And honestly, to the point where I was like, I can't even really date this person because she's Church of Christ. I'm just not going to do it. And then she kind of started showing me that all churches of Christ aren't the same. It's crazy. And in fact, we started dating, and I immediately moved to Boston to start planting a church, helping plant a church in
I
Boston.
forgot about Boston.
Yeah. So it was in Dorchester. I'm not going to get into all that. We didn't do a whole lot. We just went around and interviewed a lot of people in the city, done a lot of groundwork, and basically wrote a big prospectus. It was like a 25-page document on if I was going to plant a church in this area, this is how I would do it, and then give it to a guy who actually lived there, and he started planting a church. Okay. That's pretty much it. Anyway, so fast forward to when we get back, we get married, or before we get married, we started looking at churches and wanting to be a part of something, and we knew that we didn't want to be at the Well anymore, and it had nothing to do with anything there. We had been a part of 2 other church plants, one in Huntsville, one in Tuscaloosa, and they now have like 4 or 5 other ones now. Like they're booming. But we knew that we didn't want to be a part of that right now, just because we knew that we didn't want our lives to be constantly moving from place to place. We just couldn't church plant at that time, right? And then we knew we didn't want to be a part of Chisholm. It was nothing to do with them or anything. It was just we both just didn't want to be where we'd always been, right? So we started going to a ton of different places, and we landed at Florence Boulevard, actually. So we started going to Florence Boulevard, and Austin there, the preacher, he actually married us in his office. We got married and stayed there for a while, and just kind of realized that wasn't really the place we wanted to be. I mean, nothing towards them or anything. It just wasn't. It wasn't where we felt like we could be active and doing a lot. And really, in that moment, we just wanted to be ministered to. And so we started going to a few other different churches and interviewed, or talked to different ministers and pastors and things like that. And we came here and heard about the Toy and Coat giveaway. And I was like, well, let me just check it out. So I went one day to the Toy and Coat giveaway, and that's what made me fall in love with this church. It's what made us really fall in love with this church, is the involvement in the community constantly, just in different ways in different areas. And I would say that our church is exceptional at reaching out to people in the community and things like that. And, I think that there's some other ways that we can do that. I think that even looking at church planting in general might be something that's worth, examining, looking at why we might do that. I mean, it's always been a huge part in my life, something I've always loved to do. And if we could plant another church in an area around here that just really needs it, I think that would be awesome too. So
I'll go with you.
Come on.
I appreciate, I don't mean to make me sound like some kind of old fogey that has it all together with what I'm about to say, but you have been an example to me for these last several months that I've gotten to know you. Just from you sharing your story, not only in here, the fact that you're willing to share it with our teenagers, the fact that you're willing to share it with our children and our children's ministry. People need to hear this, because some of us get stuck in a rut, right? We show up, turn in the parking lot, go find our seat, go to Wendy's, go home. You haven't lived that way. You've lived trying to tell the next person you meet about Jesus. And that's what we're all supposed to do, right? Right? So thank you for that. And I'm going to stop because I'll get emotional. I have to say Russ Lambert. Russ Lambert, a couple times so I won't cry. And how about this? Since he's standing, and I'll put him on the spot, Frank, come over and pray over JJ and Laura and Ruth and Henry. And thank you guys for being here today, and thank you for coming back.
Father, we are humbled that you put gifts and talents in a bend in JJ, and you've been faithful to him through all of those trials and experiences we heard about. And we thank you for linking his life at Chick-fil-A with Laura. And we thank you for her and her passion for our children here. Thank you for bringing JJ that day, Toy and Coat Day, and even just the time, that hour or two we had to work together. I'm grateful. And I thank you for his passion for sharing your son and the good news with others, for his work with our middle school boys, particularly his mentorship and his friendship. We're grateful. We thank you for their love for their children, and even the ones that they have, teenagers they fostered. And on we could go. We give you thanks for this couple. And we pray that their life will inspire us, regardless of our age, to be intentional about what's really important in life. I thank you for both of them and their precious family. We lift them up to you. Please throw up out the windows of heaven and just bless them with every spiritual blessing and every emotional and relational blessing and every other blessing that they need to continue to bring glory and honor to you. It's in the name of Jesus that we lift them up, and we all say, amen.
Yes, sir.